And Mike is here.
Right.
And you're up.
Oh, she did? Oh. Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The Board of Selectmen's called to order at September 26, 6 p.m. First call of business is to approve the September 12th minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Public forum, this is an opportunity for anyone who wants to address the Board of Selectmen with any issue that is not on the agenda this evening. Wow, nobody. Okay. Consider request to make Grandview Avenue a one-way street running from Ocean Avenue to South Main Street. Is there anybody that,
Yes, good evening. My name's Amy McNally. Thank you.
what, could you, yeah.
My
Could you
name's
state your
Amy.
name again?
Sure, it's Amy McNally.
And you're representing?
Mr. Borowski, who's also here, Andrew Borowski. And I am also from Ralph Austin's office. I'm standing in for him tonight. He submitted a letter to the board dated August 23rd where we made this request. And I largely stand on the letter where the request is to make Grandview Ave a one-way street that would go from Ocean Ave to Main Street. And largely the rationale behind that is justifying the safety concerns that have come to the attention of the residents. Mr. Borowski is here to speak more specifically about those concerns, as he has firsthand knowledge of being a long-term resident of Grandview Avenue. But the road is narrow, there's a high volume of pedestrian traffic, there's a lot of issues with sight distances, and large amounts of traffic in that area that's causing some issues. So at this point, I would turn it over to Mr. Borowski to address those concerns with the board, if that's okay.
Yep.
Excuse me for how. Hi, my name's Ed.
Could you
It almost
just,
looks like your sneaker.
Yeah, I know.
just state your name and where you're from?
My name's Andrew Borowski. I've been a resident of Kennebunkport actually now for 40 years when I first moved here, and I've been in my house on Grandview Ave for 31 years. So I've watched a lot of kind of changes that have happened over the years of growth and some really positive stuff that's happened in the city. And the issue of the street really kind of came to fore probably 5 or 7 years ago when my next across the street neighbor, Debbie Stapleton, approached me where we're having a ton of skateboarders on the street. And she actually worked with the city, I think, and that got kind of calmed down, and that's been much better. But over the years, the tenor of the street has changed. One, I think during that time period, East Avenue became one way going towards Ocean Avenue. Mm-hmm. And so that shifted some more traffic onto Grandview. And we also have on Grandview that when you're coming up or down Grandview and you've got the traffic from both sides coming up or down South Main Street, the traffic has become, there's more trucks now that use the roads and more buses that, during the season, buses that use the roads. And the sight lines, while you're seeing a little bit, when you come up from my next door neighbor on the other side, from the Winstanleys at 43 South Main, and when you come up that hill, people go flying up over the hill. And so we're beginning to have on both sides, from cars all of a sudden having to move over, property damage that happens on both sides, on Debbie's property, mine, and Mark Lamar, who lives across the street next door to the Tarkington, has actually had cars go up onto that, and almost, there's a stone wall there, and almost go into the wall. So we actually called Mike Klaus to this year and Debbie and I had a nice meeting with him to try to figure out, was there something we could do to make it safer? Because we also have, what's changed at the River Club is the court that's across the street from the main courts at the River Club, which got first put up someplace, I think, in the 70s, became 2 courts instead of 1 court eventually. And so there's much more traffic of children and stuff between the 2 properties. And that's a concern just because people don't tend to look as carefully as they should, and people going up and down the street normally drive in the middle of the street and come flying up or flying down. So our concern was, how do we take care of not having vehicular accidents to property, and also plowing issues that come up in the wintertime because of trying to make the road the proper width for 2 cars when it's very narrow. How to address that the children going back and forth, or even adults, don't get hurt. and how to basically make the area safer and more conducive to residents and even to the River Club. So we approached all of our neighbors, and each neighbor signed the letter of consent saying, yeah, we would be in favor of doing this. And so Mike suggested that we write. We had to come before you to talk and answer any questions that you might have. But I've, over the years, just have watched significantly more traffic come. And, and I watched, in the mornings, there's some mornings where people run boot camp on the street, which is great. But if a car comes around the corner and there's people 5 wide on the street, it becomes kind of an issue. And it's not made for heavy traffic. And it did get worse when, obviously East Avenue went one way the other way. And so that's why we're here, to actually talk to you after we talked to Mike, trying to find the best solution. I think when we talked to him, he said, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, but the plowing may become easier as they push up. They don't have to worry as much about the properties on either side. And both Debbie and I each year have a significant amount of property damage, both from drivers trying to push over both on South Main Street to get out of the way, both sides, and also the corners at the top of South Main, Grandview Ave. So that's why, and basically it's about a 1-block street. It's not a very long street, but it gets, because of the way people use it as a cut-through now. And I understand that, it's a change in traffic patterns, but we're really doing it for an issue of safety and concern for both the River Club people that go back and forth so nobody gets hurt, and for the residents in the neighborhood. So,
Okay, is there anybody else that would like to
So
speak?
can I-
What,
sure.
you'll have to come.
You have to go to the
You'll have to
mic.
come up to the
Oh.
mic, please, and state your name. And,
I've got a question for Mike.
okay.
My name is Michael Pappas, and I live at 96 Ocean Ave, which is on the corner of East Ave and Ocean Ave. And I've been a resident or a property owner here for 17 years. My question is, where are you going, so do you want a one-way on?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm opposed to it. Okay, and the reason I'm opposed to it is because the traffic is now gonna be down East Ave. And East Ave is a windy road, no sidewalks, people from the lodge, from the cottages all walk down there. And I feel we're gonna get more traffic if it goes up there, your street on a one-way, it's gonna come down East Ave. So I'm opposed to it.
I've looked at the street, I've driven on the street many years now, and East Avenue is like a snake. I mean, it goes in almost every which direction. And Grandview, it's a straight shot up until you get up to the hill, and you have to either go left or right. There's a good line of sight, and I'm having a hard time with that, but.
I am too, because I know that we're gonna have more traffic on East Ave, because now people will go there. And, we have a number of people, from East Ave here tonight, and maybe they wanna say something,
Yeah,
but.
they have every right to.
At least, that's my opinion anyway,
Right.
and.
Sheila, do you have any questions for these two?
Yeah, I had one for Mike, if you would.
Am I done here?
Yes, yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. No, Mike, my concern or question revolves around the top of the street as you go up and the angles turning left or right. Is that a problem for larger vehicles like a bus? Is it a problem for fire trucks? Is there a safety issue? I mean, I'm trying to wrestle with this.
I haven't had any issues. We ran it by Chief Sanford.
Right.
There haven't been any issues that he knows of. Fire department hasn't brought any issues to us. The issue with any large vehicles is if, they get out there and people don't see them coming.
Well, no, I
Same as
realize
buses all
that.
around.
It's just a fact of life. I think living here, you have to adjust your normal driving habits to let a bus make the turn or a semi get around the corner, and we all understand that, but
There
I
aren't
just,
any good turns for buses in that area.
Right, and generally speaking, the buses don't there may be one or two, but don't they go down toward the Colony? I mean, if they're coming from the Village Cove, what used to be the Village Cove, they generally go down and take the back road of South Main Street to the Colony, and then go out that way. They don't usually use the side streets. That's my thought.
I mean,
That's actually even more dangerous, because when you go down past and you're going down South Main Street, as you go down the hill.
You'll have to get closer to the mic, sir.
That's even.
Thanks, Mike.
From a bus standpoint, and Debbie Stapleton's sister was going to be here and is not, and she lives in the yellow house sort of right in front of East Ave. The buses going both by, she says, coming up and going down are probably in front of her house, but the buses going down or up from where the Colony is and coming around, so they come that really curved, they talk about East Avenue being curvy. That curve
South
where,
Main, yeah.
yeah, that section of South, where you can't see anything.
But they've been doing that.
Well, yeah,
For 100
but I tell you,
years.
I walk that street and I'm jumping on the dirt
Well,
more
I'll tell
often
you,
than
the
not.
back roads in Kennebunkport should not be walked.
Well-
That should not be your walking path, because, I drive Wiles District, and, it's tough when you have bikers and
walkers,
walkers,
it's-
because those roads are,
But those
we're
roads were,
country narrow.
well, they were designed for resident, it wasn't as, Ocean Avenue was the road of the buses and the
Right.
trucks.
Right.
And so that as Ocean Avenue gets busier, they tend to want to go, take shortcuts.
Mike, I have a question, because we've been asked
I know, I'm
before
sure.
these kinds of things. And one of the issues that's always brought up is how wide actually is the street? How wide is the street that the town owns?
You're talking about the right-of-way.
the right-of-way is much wider than the pavement. I think.
That's what I
It's
assumed.
probably about.
So just like in the other cases, the lawns have basically grown over where the road actually is.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, actually, those were I think there were small roads that actually got wider over the years. But the
I'm just saying that
right-of-way.
the town has specifics on
Yeah.
roads.
Okay,
As far as East Avenue, oh, go ahead.
well, I'd like to have, anybody that wants to speak
Yeah,
should
I'm
have, and we only
You
have
can
a short
sit. You
amount
can
of time
sit.
on this, so, yeah.
Hello, my name's Dick Ackley. I'm a resident of East Avenue, and I'm representing Lynn Chase, who owns 4 properties on East Avenue. Makes no sense whatsoever to turn a one-way street that has 100% visibility into a traffic pattern that goes onto a street that is totally serpentine, and possibly one of the last streets in our town that we're able to walk our dogs, push a carriage, and teach our kids how to ride a bicycle on. If this whole thing is about somebody's lawn that is actually moved on to the town street, it should be a no-brainer.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that has anything that would like to add to the conversation?
My name is Bill Claus. I live on East Avenue, and I'm a year-round resident of East Avenue. And during the winter, I walk from East Avenue on South Main to the ocean, and you can do that walk in the winter, and you will not meet a car going either way. And we're talking about maybe 10 weeks in the summer when there's some effect on the one-way traffic and on Grandview. And the people that live at the top of the hill, they can leave their residence and drive on to South Main. They don't have to worry about which direction they're going. The other point is we get a lot of traffic from landscape people coming into through East Avenue, and traffic going to the Nonanthem, and traffic coming from the Village Cove Inn coming through. So I'm right now against this ordinance.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Is there anybody else that would like to comment? What would you guys like to do?
I'm not in favor of it, from what I've heard.
Well, he made some very good points, because I don't live and walk in that area, so I was not aware of them. I understand the homeowner's concerns, but I don't think I want to
I'd be
change
more
it.
concerned with more traffic on East Ave.
Yeah,
because it's-
I think, I don't think I'm.
So from what I'm gathering is, we're not getting any
Positive.
positive feedback on this, so I don't think that we're gonna be able to take any action on this.
So do we have the opportunity at some point if we want to come back?
You can always come back,
Sure.
always.
Yeah.
Yeah,
John Rinaldi, I live on Ocean Ave. Part of the club, I'm not here fighting for it to be one way or not, but thought came to my mind, there is an issue with, in the summertime for 2 months, we have these camps for the kids, and then they're on the boat side in the morning, they come across the street, come across Ocean Avenue, they have their lunch by the tennis courts there, and then they go across Grandview Avenue to do their tennis activities in the afternoons, and there's quite a good crowd of them. There's a dozen of them at any given time marching back and forth, and of course they're not paying attention. They're kids. They do have counselors trying to keep track of them, but maybe there's a way we can, at least in the time being, until you get this resolved, or maybe it never will be, some sort of a little crosswalky type thing there, just to try to keep the kids corralled into one spot to get across the street. I mean, I don't know. Just a thought
I
to
don't
help
know.
that
that's a question
situation.
for Mike, isn't it, or you? You've been awful quiet.
You're doing such a good
Oh,
job.
boy.
I don't need to say anything. Mike, did you hear, though, the concern that John raised about the kids crossing Grandview Avenue to the tennis courts in the summer, and whether or not we might be able to install a crosswalk or have some pedestrian assistance there during the summer months?
The kids come across from more up towards where the tennis court is. They come through where the courts are on the other side of Grandview. And they go across, and they do have counselors with them, but a dozen kids, they start darting around and stuff, and maybe it would be helpful for the time being to, because it is one of the concerns. I admit Grandview is very narrow at the top, but, I'm not here to fight for that either way.
Could you
But I
speak
do
into
have
the
a little-
mic?
I do have a little concern for that, the kids thing going back and forth, and it's only 2 months, I understand that, but maybe there's a way to just help that a little bit. It's not a big deal, a pretty simple thing to do. I don't know what you think about it, but I don't know what the rules are for putting a crosswalk just willy-nilly. I don't know. So,
We had a similar problem with the community house going across to the church, and we did put some additional signage up right there at the corner of, where you come out of the Dock Square parking lot. So I think that's probably just better addressed with some signage rather than a mid-block crosswalk.
Right.
Okay,
we
Just
can
because
do
of it's just we want to warn people about children.
Yeah,
so are we good with that?
Yeah.
good.
Yep. Thank you. So we're not gonna take any action on this other than maybe put up a couple of signs,
Yeah, children.
children at play or whatever? Yeah. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Ask for one other thing,
Yeah.
maybe while you're doing the signs.
You have to
There are-
speak to
there
the mic.
is- There is no parking on both sides of the road.
I can't
So
hear you.
there is no parking already on both sides, but some of the signs over time have been kind of knocked down and stuff. Can we fix the signs that are there and just make sure that nobody parks on both sides?
I'm
so
not
that-
sure about
And we already
the
have the
problem
signs
with
up
that.
there. It's just that they're, Can we, as long as
Mike,
you
you
don't
might
fix
as well
this-
just
I'll
stay
stay
right
here.
there.
I'll talk to Chief Sanford, we'll go over it and make sure we got proper signage.
Okay.
Perfect.
That's all.
Thank you.
All right?
Yep, thank you very much. Thank you guys for all coming out and speaking up. Let's see. Update on Ocean Avenue Seawall project. Mike, where are you?
So I gave you guys a little memo on some of our cost issues we've had. We took a good look at the bridge rail, similar to the Lanningham Bridge. It's a little bit different, but we're working on switching the railing over to that. And working with Shaw Brothers, they came up with some increased costs for that. So we just wanted to bring that to your attention. Also, because of these costs, we didn't approve any shop drawings because we wanted to make sure you wanted to keep going in this direction. But they're good with moving the construction to spring. There's no cost change for moving it to spring. They'd start as soon as they could in February, March. They're sometimes if we get a easy winter, they could start right in February and keep going. But they say no matter what, they could be done by Memorial Day, complete, if we gave them a spring start. And I think rather than trying to rush things through the fall,
Right.
Yeah.
this is probably a better plan.
Well, I have a couple questions. We're overrun by 16,280, correct? And that doesn't count the rails, the bridge rails.
That doesn't count the spots in front of John Rinaldi's house and the spots in front of the River Club. We still have to design some transitions and railings for that.
So we're over budget, we don't have the money to do it, so what's your suggestion? Do you think that we could postpone the rails until the next cycle, budget cycle, or do you think,
Or are we gonna find a way to reduce these costs?
there you go, that's a better question.
I have not found a way to reduce the costs yet. We
You're
have
working on
not
it.
signed any contracts. I can go back to Worden and Curran and talk to them. We can hold off on doing railings. There is no legal requirement to put railings
I
on
mean,
there.
there's no safety issues where these two spots are, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So, if we need to postpone that for a time, we could do that.
Okay.
Okay.
Because I don't want to stop the project, I want to keep the project going, but I just want to make sure how we're going to pay for it, because the budget's, we don't have it in the budget to do it. We've had a lot of cost overruns.
Well, this doesn't include, we don't have any contingency built in here, so we haven't dug anything up yet and found anything that we're unaware of. So,
There is
the
that.
budget is a big concern to Mike and I. So we're going to continue to refine these costs and bring them back to you.
And you do a great job doing that, by the way.
Since we're not starting till spring, we haven't signed
We've got
anything.
time.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we will continue, I just wanted to update you on that, and then we will get with Worden and Curran and Shaw Brothers and see if we can
All right,
continue.
thanks, Mike.
Okay.
Request to support recycling legislation and authorize petition. Ah, how you doing, John?
There he is.
Good to see you.
Good evening, my name is John Dykstra. I'm a member of the Solid Waste Committee. We're looking at, as you know, our future plans for recycling within Kennebunkport. During our activities a couple months ago, we came across a request to support a petition. It was given by the Natural Resource Council of Maine. It's a petition in support of a resolve that was passed last March in the legislature, the Maine legislature, requesting that legislation, or actually requiring that legislation be written to support municipal recycling programs. I'll share with you just a little bit of the summary, just for the record. This is speaking now about the LD 1431. That is a legislation that is supported by the petition that we are hoping you will choose to sign. This resolve requires the Department of Energy Protection to develop proposed legislation to establish a new product stewardship program requiring producers of packaging to assist Maine municipalities in managing and financing package waste disposal and recycling programs within the state. This proposed legislation is required also to incentivize producers of packaging to design packaging to be recycled or made of recycled content to strengthen recycling markets. We felt that this was important for 3 reasons. One, most important, is it lessens the tax burden on our residents in that it will actually bring money into our municipality in support of our recycling programs. 2, it provides a financial carrot and stick to incentivize producers of packaging to reduce waste and increase the recyclability of their packages. And 3, it establishes an audit trail, not unlike the bottle law, which allows objective means to measure compliance and program effectiveness. We think it's an important piece of legislation. We hope that the Board of Selectmen will choose to add Kennebunkport's name to the growing number of municipalities that are supporting this legislation.
So, John, how are they going to award or reward the companies for less packaging? How's that?
It's going to be worked out in the legislation. So in essence, this sets up
Sounds like a lot more money to me.
to whom?
Whenever you let the government get involved, it just increases costs. And we're going to feel it one way or the other.
I think, certainly as individuals, until the competitive forces of the market take over, the people that are selling the packaging will probably raise the prices a few cents.
A few?
To cover, I don't think it's
Yeah.
going to be that. They got to stay competitive.
Yeah.
There's always the competition. That's the one beautiful side of our.
That's the only part of this that I like.
Well, yeah, me too, is
Yeah.
that it will be an incentive for the producers. I mean, we got an Aleve bottle the other day. It's this big, it has this much pills in it. All that plastic. And I can see why they do it, because if they put a tiny bottle, and the next guy has this big bottle, what are we gonna grab? But if everybody's gotta put it in small bottles, wouldn't that be grand?
Yeah.
So I think that's really one of the elements of this legislation is to get the producers to be good stewards. And the packaging material, we are being swamped. I'm a great Amazon, I buy from Amazon all the time, I love it, but it comes in a box, and although they're getting better, they need to be encouraged financially. And that's the only way you can talk to these people, to any company. I don't know, these people, hell, they got a business. But if we can incentivize them and they all do it together, this is the way to go.
Well, we've been through a pretty good-sized rough patch on the recyclables this last 3 or 4 months. And I'm going to, hopefully, somebody's going to make a motion, I'm going to be in favor of it. But, we're going to try to go ahead, and as we go forward in the rest of this year, we're going to try to go ahead and see what we can do for the recyclable for next year, whether it might be curbside or it might be drop-off with a manned drop-off station, so many hours a week or whatever. We're going to look at all these problems, because we've gotten plenty of letters, one-on-ones, telephone calls, and electronic mailings. So we hear everybody, and we know that people do really want to do the recycling. They want to do the good thing. So do we. We want to do the same thing, but we just have got to find a good way, a good solid way of doing it.
Right.
And we're going to take this year, hopefully, more people will be educated on what they can throw away or what they can recycle. And next year, hopefully, we'll have something in place for recycling.
Perfect,
That's how I feel.
perfect.
And I think the board feels the same way. But we just have got to have, we just didn't have the money to recycle this year. It wasn't in the budget. It was passed, the budget was passed before all this. So
Well, that and the fact that we had the gentleman from Casella here, and you know the whole story.
I was here during your bet.
Right. And so my feeling is to spend that money and then have everything go into trash anyway, didn't make a whole lot of sense. I've never been in favor of the government getting involved with the things that we do. It just makes it more complicated. They wind up having another committee, and then they pay more people, and then everybody's taxes go up. But I also don't want Kennebunkport to look like they're against recycling, or they're not for recycling.
Because we're not
So
against
I'm
it.
in a dilemma here.
Well, let me help you out.
All right.
Not all government legislation is bad. I just want to say that
Okay.
up front. This might well work out. If enough towns get behind it, the word will become apparent, something has to change. And I think that's our hope.
Okay.
Yeah, Dave James. It seems to me you're prejudging something that may have some benefit here. And I don't see what we have to lose by signing this petition and letting the legislature move forward and see what they come up with. And once they come up with something, then make your final judgments. But you're prejudging what you think they might come up with, and you really
Oh.
don't know.
David.
So, my opinion,
Okay.
I think you're just kind of burying your head in the sand and saying, that's not a good way to go. And I would
Well-
like to see other options out there.
I think we as a town probably can do just as well. Like Alan said, this, we were told that recycling, the majority of it is going in the trash anyway. Well, that doesn't make sense to me, for us to spend another $200,000 for it to become trash. I would like to see,
You were told that by a company that collects
well, it was two
curbside.
companies.
Two companies, okay, fine.
It was the two companies that take our trash.
Yes, I know. And so they were not really, unless they could get that $295,000 or whatever it was
No,
going to
this
cost.
was even before the contract. This was,
I know, but when you look at what EcoMaine says, they're not burning
Well, they're
everything
promoting themselves,
and
too.
burying everything that comes to them. They're
So-
taking opportunities as the market allows. And the market can change very, very quickly, or not quickly, but over time. So I
Well,
just think you might be ruling out something.
I just don't, I'm more for the town doing things on its own, as opposed to getting as opposed to the state telling us what we have to do.
Yeah, but the town doing it on its own right now has not been very successful. And you got a lot of people that are very upset about what the town's doing on its own.
We're
So I
working
just-
on
I
that.
think
We
you-
really
So
are.
maybe we could just separate these issues.
Yes, exactly, thank you.
So-
These are two different
So,
issues
I
at
mean,
the
one
time.
issue is recycling,
That's
and,
right.
and it
That's
gets
right.
back
So-
to that. And so certainly it was more than just the two manufacturers who were giving us information about recycling. We talked to people out of the state as well as in the state. I would agree that, the recycling market is ever evolving, and I think the Selectmen and Budget Board recognized that in the process, and that's why they said suspend curbside recycling versus cut it out altogether, and we did our best. I understand nobody, or most people, for the most part, are not happy with that resolution. The Solid Waste Committee is doing good work and working on solutions, and our plan is, as part of the budget process, to bring some alternatives. But that is done for now.
Okay, fair.
But for this, I think it is good to recognize that in terms of impacting packaging, and we've talked about the triangle, reduce, reuse, recycle. And reduce is difficult for us to impact individually. And so if we can impact manufacturers, because I've gotten a fair number of comment from citizens who say, I can't control how people package materials. And so you tell me to reduce, how am I supposed to do that? And this is a way, and I think, in which we can join with other people to say the marketplace is ready for a change in terms of how products are delivered to us so that we can help and have a better impact overall.
And I'm not against recycling. Don't
Okay.
get me wrong.
I still go back to my original point. I think you're prejudging what the legislature is going to come up with. And what's the harm in signing a petition to encourage them to move forward?
Oh, well, I'm going to sign it.
Okay,
All right. So could I have a motion?
I will make the motion to sign the, whereas,
The petition.
Right here, the petition.
the petition, yeah.
Right here.
Should it be read? Adoption of a resolution in support of developing an extended producer responsibility
Packaging.
Motion? And
for
do I-
packaging law. There was another line.
I second that.
Okay.
I have a first and second. Any more discussion? All in favor? There we go.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I still don't like the state getting involved.
We heard that.
We're putting that on your gravestone.
I told you beforehand. No.
You'll miss me when I'm gone.
It'll be right under, we pay 42% of the bill.
Yeah, right.
Okay, establishment of a Parks and Recreation Committee. There you are. Hi, Carol. How
Hi,
are you this
Carol.
evening? Good, how are you? Good, good, good. We're good, we're both good.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I think you had something in your packets regarding this proposal. And really, it's not the establishment of a committee, because we had a committee. It was in the administrative code, and it just kind of languished over the years. And now we find that we're in a position where we're trying to add new programs and do new things, and
You just
we
can't
could
do it by yourself.
We could use some help.
Yeah.
And certainly the most recent Chalk the Port was a good example of, you know, how can we generate more volunteers, and how could we get the word out to more people, and how could we do this, and how could we do that? And it kept coming back, we need a rec committee. And so in looking at the old rec committee in the administrative code, what we're really wanting to add to that is the concept of having to do with recreation programming as well as facilities. So it would be seeking 5 to 7 members, broad representation in terms of age representation, activity, you know, whatever. It did indicate all members to serve a 2-year term. I would think that we'd probably want to start by staggering that so that everybody doesn't start and end their term at the same time. So I didn't know what the next step was in terms of trying to get this established. Does it have to go to the Administrative Code Committee to be finalized, or is it just your
No.
approval of it?
So the Board of Selectmen, you know, can give us authority to go looking for members. One thing that we did do in the memo here is further clarify the mission. So on your second sheet, you have what the administrative code says under the duties, and the duties are rather broad. And so we gave a further clarification of mission in the memo that we're hoping the Board of Selectmen would adopt, so that we could advertise that that's what, you know, the committee's purpose would be.
Sounds great to me.
Yeah, you can use the help.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I don't know how you've done it all these years by
Do we have
yourself
to vote
anyway.
to do that?
Yeah,
I think if you would vote on the
Formally.
mission,
The mission to formalize the committee of Parks and Rec activities.
well, to formalize the mission that's stated in the memo would clarify what the committee's going to be
With
working on.
5 to 7 members?
Yep.
I have a first.
Did you already
I did.
make the motion second?
you have a question over here, too.
Oh,
Oh, sorry.
Come. Sure.
Just a suggestion, I've lived in towns that have had very effective rec committees, and they've always included a teenager on the committee, and it's been very, very helpful in getting a broad range of opinion. That's my suggestion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I have a first and second. Any more discussion? All right, all in favor? Thanks, Carol.
Thank you.
Don't go away, I have a question. Chalk Fest, how was it?
Chalk Fest was very good. I would say we got a lot of very positive feedback. We generated probably close to $6,000 for the Recreation Scholarship account as a result of our efforts.
Great. Wow.
And it could not have been done without all hands on deck. I mean, we had, everybody in town office was involved, the police, the fire, codes, you name it. Town employees were involved at some level. And then we had, you know, Deb Lennon from KRC
Right.
was just phenomenal in her assistance, and the number of sponsorships that we were able to get, everything just, it was really quite something.
We're glad to hear it.
there were a number
Good
of
place to- is it
young
great?
people around town with chalk in their ears for about 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, that's true.
After this event, yeah.
That is
That they
true.
didn't want to wash out.
Well, you know.
See, I got
It's
Whoever
pretty
let
cool.
their car be written on, There was a car. And
Yes.
I've got a few pictures of the little ones doing that.
Yes,
So
that,
that was
he
fun.
contacted us, I think he's in Massachusetts or someplace, and he was willing to come. And at first, it was something that we were gonna have to pay for, and then he said he'd come in anyway. So it ended up not costing us, and it was great, because he decorated a little bit, and then he drove around town and drew some attention to the activity, for
that's
sure.
great.
Yeah,
Yeah, great.
You guys do a great job.
That was wonderful.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
thank you.
Great job, thank you.
All right.
Okay, A, consider agent fee increase for motor vehicle registrations effective October 1st, 2019. I'm going to pass that to you.
So I'm going to ask
Who are you gonna
Tracy,
pass it to?
Tracy O'Rourke
Tracy O'Rourke.
to come to the podium, as Tracy and her staff are the ones who handle the vehicle registrations.
I guess the buck stops with me. So on,
Literally.
on September 19th, state law increased the fees that we could charge for vehicle municipal agent fees. They increased it by $2. So I'm just basically asking you for permission to be able to increase the fees to bring us in line with state law. All of the surrounding towns, Kennebunkport and Arundel, have already put it into effect. We're suggesting doing it as of October 1st, just to have a clear start date, and that's pretty much it.
It's been quite a few years since you've had an
Yeah,
increase.
it's been many years since they've increased it, so, and it, you know, like I said, it's only $2, so
So,
it's not a huge jump.
thank you. Ivor, you have any questions?
Nope.
No questions. You,
I motion to increase municipal agent fees for vehicle registration
You want to just state the,
from $4 to $6 and $3 to $5. $3 to $5 for each vehicle renewal and $4 to $6 for each new registration.
there you go.
that's what you want?
God, that's
That's
too
it.
much reading.
Okay, I will second
I
that.
have a first and second. All in favor?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other business. Lori?
So we have two items. One is about flood maps, and one is three-town leadership. So I'm going to bring Werner up for flood maps. So if you will remember your last meeting, we told you that we received notification from FEMA that our application had been denied. And so we were given the opportunity at that time to submit for a scientific resolution panel, which is an independent group that reviews the evidence and makes a determination. FEMA is not required to accept that determination, keep in mind. So since that time, we had a meeting with our multi-town group who submitted the applications together, and then we contacted our congressional delegation. They were able to secure a meeting with FEMA Region 1 reps. Yesterday, we had our meeting with the multi-town group, congressional delegation, and representatives from FEMA. It was a 4-hour-long meeting, and it was rather disappointing, I will say, that, bureaucracy was heavy in the room, and there was a little desire to come to resolution based on better data. So each town and city, and we had 7 of us all together, got between Cumberland and York counties, each got their own individual letter, and the letters for denial differed. Most of them had to do with, keep in mind that this computer modeling is done with a program built on MathWorks Foundation. So it is a very extensive program that you couldn't even have imagined was possible years ago that did this hydraulic modeling for us. In one of the calculations for the wave setups for the base flood elevations, there was an error where you had to turn it from meters to feet. And the engineers on our application and a few others failed to make that conversion. When you make that conversion for us, it had no impact on our base flood elevations because it has to do with where and the topography of your land and where that transect is. So they reran the calculations. It took them close to 2 weeks and provided that information. And we provided that information to FEMA, who has since said that the appeal deadline closed this was, keep in mind, 10 months ago that the appeal deadline closed. They've had our information for 10 months and did not bring that error or have any conversation with us about that. So they said that appeal deadline has closed, and that's considered new information and would be a new appeal, and they cannot accept it, is their basic reasoning to us. Some other towns had, some of the data that they were supposed to submit was in PDF instead of a data sheet, in a spreadsheet, which would have easily been available, and they were told that for that reason, they were denied. So, based on our meeting yesterday, we have three options. One is we can do the scientific resolution panel, which means we would need to notify them by Monday, if that's our choice. If we do the scientific resolution panel, we forego any legal action. We sign off on the fact that we cannot take them to court on this issue. Secondly, if the scientific resolution panel will not be able to look at our data with the conversion error corrected, because that will be considered new data. Third, if the scientific resolution panel, by some miracle, was to approve and vote in our favor, it does not mean FEMA is required to accept that. The administrator of FEMA has to make that determination. So that's the scientific resolution, or SRP, option. The second option would be to take some court action against FEMA. And the court action would be based, in our opinion, on due process. Laid out in their regulations, guidelines, and all the materials we've received since 2010 has been that there is a community collaboration process that takes place after the appeal deadline, where we exchange information back and forth, and we are to work on getting the best information and data available. There was no community collaboration allowed, and they are now saying that because this information was greater than what you would normally deal with in a community collaboration, that's why we didn't have it, and they're really not talking about the community collaboration piece at all. The third option is to not do either and let the maps go into effect and do a letter of map revision. We did get some sense at the meeting yesterday that people felt like with our corrected data that we would be successful in the letter of map revision. Keep in mind, there's no guarantee of that. The problem is that the maps have to go into effect before you can file your letter of map revision, which means we would have anywhere from 6 months to a year, we'll say, where people would have to buy flood insurance. And perhaps we would then be able to revert the maps, and they could come out of the flood insurance program at that point. So we had a long conversation with them about, the amount of impact that would have on residents unnecessarily. And isn't there another way we could get to this end? So those to us are the three options. Do you have anything?
Yeah, so everything that Lori brought up, is accurate in terms of, the meeting that we had. There was another option that was laid out, and that would be to file a letter of map revision now. That would essentially be asking for a revision of the current maps that are in place, which, keep in mind, these maps are, 30 years old. It would revise those maps, but then we're a little bit unsure in terms of what would occur when the 2017 prelims would then essentially override them. We were getting indications from FEMA that, that the revised data would then be brought over.
Or looked at.
And it would supersede these 2017 maps. And that there would be, from a regulatory perspective, a one-day, hiatus in terms of the maps.
Or we might have to apply for a second letter of map revision.
If we do that map revision, can we still do litigation? Or
Yep, we can still
Yes.
do litigation.
Okay.
So one thing about that fourth option, it was kind of an idea generated in the meeting. But if they are going effective, which is their plan now, January 1st of 2020, is when they would give our final determination letter. There is a period prior to that where they do not let any new letter of map revisions come forward, because of course you need a time period where you can create the new maps. And it seemed unlikely that we would be able, very unlikely, that we would be able to get our letter of map revision, do the work necessary prior to that deadline occurring without the federal government changing their mind about that date.
Okay.
So it's still floating out here as a very creative possible solution, but I wouldn't say it's something that we can see happening today.
Okay, so,
So based on the information we received yesterday, we do not think that we should move forward with the scientific resolution panel. We think that it is, would have a poor outcome for the town. We don't have any reason to believe we'd be successful, and that it would limit our ability to take court action. We don't think we should take court action right this moment either, but it may be something that we consider. We're trying to get a better understanding of the date for that. Our attorneys, there were a variety of attorneys present at the meeting. They have recommended that all the towns and cities submit their comments within that 30-day period, which will be Monday, to FEMA, so that we put all those statements on record with FEMA in case we do take court action. It may make sense because if one town or city in York County files an SRF, or if they file a court action, it stops the whole process of implementation of the maps for the county, just like in Cumberland County. So if one of the communities here were to do that, then we would be delaying the implementation of the maps, which may make it more available to do that fourth creative option out there.
that's basically what we should do.
So,
We can't.
well, so I've been communicating with the other towns and cities and seeing if somebody is going to put that out there. I would certainly like to reserve our legal rights if we can, because if we can hit it on both ends of that spectrum, I think there is some possibilities for a better outcome.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, one of my concerns that I voiced, at the meeting was that, what we're attempting to do is we're attempting to, to have FEMA recognize the corrected data. And so we're at that point, we have that data in hand. And, essentially what we were told was that, well, if you would have used this process, we would consider that information, but because you did this process, then I'm sorry, we can't accept that. So, as part of this as well, we've also encouraged the congressional delegation, to reach out to leadership at FEMA so that they get a better understanding of what the potential insurance impact would be on communities if we had this hiatus between the two maps, and just potentially what kind of chaotic environment that would create for folks if they had to have a policy for 6 to 8 months, and then all of a sudden that policy was able to be downgraded, and what that would look like. You can imagine what that would create.
I think one other thing to note is if we did the fourth creative solution, where we asked for a letter of map revision on the current map, keep in mind that if I'm at House A right now and I do not pay any flood insurance, and with the new preliminary maps, the base flood elevation is going to increase, let's say, by 2 feet. And so I'm going to have to definitely buy flood insurance. But if the town is to ask for a correction on the current maps, where I'm paying 0, they are going to be increasing. So rather than 2 feet, maybe it's 1 foot increase. I'm going to have to enter the flood insurance pool sooner than I would have because of the effective date. We're asking us, usually people do a correction to lower the levels.
Right.
In this case, we're asking them to increase the levels, but increase them lower than where they're going to be. So there is a bit of a communication I think we would have to do with people who, for a short period of time, we'd be entering the program sooner on our bequest. But in the long term, we would be hopefully reducing that penalty for them.
So I guess we need to wait a little bit.
Well,
Except for
we wanted to
the
make sure
application.
you guys are
Yeah.
in agreement, since the last thing we talked to you about was doing the scientific resolution panel. And we are recommending we don't do that.
I think that would be a poor choice, where you're gonna, if you do that, you're gonna go ahead and lose your place in line to go ahead and have a court action.
But we would recommend submitting our comments
Yeah.
and
That's a good
the
idea.
data that we did have.
What about you guys?
Put it on record.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we
we're
need
all
to
on
do
board.
that.
Yep.
Great.
Thanks, Werner.
All right, thank you.
So you have something else?
So, there has been some discussion about whether or not, there would be benefit to having some representatives from the 3 towns and maybe the RSU, not all of the board members, but representatives from each town and the RSU to meet on a semi-regular basis, whether it's, every couple months or quarterly, to just talk about ways in which we might assist each other or what's going on in each of the communities, and ways in which we might be able to collaborate. So I said I would talk to the board about it this evening and see what your interest level
We
is.
kind of do that on a sporadic. every
Very
once in a while.
sporadic,
Very
yeah.
sporadic. So
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
in favor of something
My
like that.
question would be, are we just going to be addressing school issues? in
No,
this
I
town
think it's,
cooperation,
I think
or
it's,
is there
I mean,
broad-
the school is the joining force amongst
Right,
all of us,
okay.
so it makes sense to include them. But no, it would be on a variety of issues. I mean, I don't have a list of what those issues would
Right,
be,
no, I understand.
but they would evolve over time, is what I imagine.
I see,
I think that'd be a good idea.
okay. Sounds like a good idea. Open the communication, try to work closer together when possible.
Anything else?
That's it?
That's it?
Nothing from here.
Nothing?
Nothing?
Nothing? I just have one thing. Mike, I want to thank you guys for working on the Mills Road. You've done such a great job. I mean, it's been time-consuming, but the traffic flow has been going great. The sides of the roads look great. You're right there. You're just waiting for one more top, right? The finished coat tomorrow. Well, I want to say you and your crew's done a great job, and I would really appreciate that, because it's going to look really great.
Yeah, without a doubt. It'll be safer, too.
And you moved the telephone poles. That's great. That's even better.
That was a tough job.
Okay, that's all I have. Approve the September 26th treasurer's warrant.
So moved?
Second,
All in favor? Motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
You all right?
Thank you, guys, for
Thank
coming.
you for coming.
Have a good evening.